After the Emperor's downfall, the galaxy did not heal, but splintered into fragments. Powerful remnants of the Empire fought among themselves, each warlord carving out dominion in the void. Order dissolved into chaos, and what once seemed like a unified rule crumbled into countless rival states.
You think you can stop me?
The weight of history pressed heavily, a reminder that even great empires could fracture overnight. It was a galaxy searching for direction,
Come on, Cade.
yet finding
Show
only
me your
conflict,
true power.
a stage where new powers would soon rise from the ashes left behind. Amid the fractured remains, a dynasty slowly emerged, reshaping the remnants into something stronger. The Fel line, descendants of Han and Leia through their daughter, restored authority where none remained. They built not only on lineage but on discipline, creating an empire that seemed poised to rival the old. This dynasty became a beacon for those desperate for unity, a name spoken with reverence among Imperials longing for order. Out of broken shards, the Fel family forged their throne, promising stability where rebellion and war had only left scars. The rulers of this dynasty were no ordinary monarchs. Sensitive to the currents of the Force, the Fel emperors carried themselves as both warriors and leaders. Guided by the Imperial Knight Code, they walked a careful line, neither fully Jedi nor Sith, but something uniquely their own. Their order of knights lived and fought by balance, loyalty to the Emperor above all. It was a vision of authority tempered with discipline, an empire run by those who understood both sides of the Force yet claimed allegiance to neither. From beyond the known galaxy, a new terror arrived. The Yuuzhan Vong invasion crashed into the stars with merciless fury, their armies immune to the Force and armed with living weapons unlike anything seen before. They were not conquerors who sought to rule, but zealots who wished only to annihilate. Entire systems burned under their advance, civilizations erased in waves of organic firepower and brutal fate. What began as a war became a holocaust across the stars, a devastation so vast that its scars would never fully fade. Even the heart of the galaxy fell to ruin. Coruscant, once the shining capital of countless eras, was consumed and transformed. No longer towers of durasteel and skylanes of brilliance, but a living nightmare, reshaped into a twisted bio-world of Vong creation. The city's familiar face was erased, rebuilt in grotesque flesh and stone that pulsed with unnatural life. For the galaxy, the fall of Coruscant was not just strategic, it was symbolic. Hope itself seemed to wither as the center of civilization became a monument to destruction. When the invasion finally ended, victory did not bring healing. The Galactic Alliance, weakened successor of the New Republic, faltered under the strain of rebuilding. Old hatreds lingered, mistrust hardened into walls between worlds, and vengeance brewed against enemies both past and present. Peace was thin, fragile, and always ready to fracture. In this uneasy calm, shadows stretched long once more. Where governments hesitated and trust failed, the Sith waited, patient as ever, knowing the galaxy's wounds were the perfect ground for their return. In the darkness left by centuries of conflict, the Sith abandoned the ancient rule of two. No longer master and apprentice locked in endless betrayal, they chose a different path. Secrets that once divided them were cast aside, and rivalry gave way to something colder, more efficient. This was not weakness, but strategy, a recognition that survival demanded unity. The galaxy, still fractured, did not yet see the storm gathering. In silence, the Sith prepared to rise together, no longer shadows clashing in pairs, but a legion bound under one banner. From this vision rose Darth Krayt, a former Jedi turned conqueror of the dark. He forged the One Sith, a single order united in loyalty to him alone. No council, no rivals, no hidden blades waiting in the dark. His word became law, his will the heartbeat of the order. To his followers, he promised strength through cohesion, the end of centuries of infighting. Where others saw doctrine, he saw empire. Under Krayt, the Sith were no longer scattered fragments, they became one weapon sharpened to pierce the galaxy. To realize his dream, Krayt withdrew into the unknown regions, a realm beyond the maps of the Republic. There, for nearly a century, he built his power in secrecy. Far from the eyes of Jedi and Imperials, he gathered followers, trained them in silence, and prepared for the moment to strike. Time itself became his greatest ally, each decade layering strength upon strength. When he emerged, it would not be as a whisper in shadow, but as a storm across the stars. His patience was the seed of his dominion. In exile, Krayt wove together fragments of empire and remnants of legend. He gathered Imperial warbands broken by past defeats, ancient Sith artifacts pulsing with forbidden energy, and dark rituals long thought lost. Each piece alone was dangerous. Together, they formed a foundation of power. Through sorcery and command, he bound them into his design, blending military might with mysticism. The Sith under Krayt were not only warriors, they were inheritors of every weapon the dark side had ever offered. His empire was built on bones, relics, and the promise of fear. To tighten their hold, the Sith struck not with fleets, but with sabotage. They turned their eyes to the Ossus Project, where Jedi sought to heal scarred worlds with Vong biotechnology. In secret, Krayt's agents corrupted the work. What was meant to restore instead twisted, leaving grotesque growths and warped life. This quiet strike was more devastating than open war. The Jedi's hope became a tool of suspicion, and whispers spread that the Vong had betrayed the galaxy once more. The seeds of fear had been planted with precision. Across the stars, horror grew. On worlds once promised renewal, mutations spread among crops, creatures, and even people. Strange bony ridges and twisted marks scarred the skin of innocents, echoing the wounds once inflicted by the Vong. Panic ignited like wildfire. Trust shattered between allies. Where the Jedi had hoped to bring healing, despair took root. It was not only ecosystems that had been poisoned, but faith itself. To the galaxy, the memory of invasion had returned in a new shape. And in that fear, the Sith saw their opening. The galaxy turned against itself when suspicion spread like wildfire. Jedi efforts to restore worlds were sabotaged, their promises of healing undone by grotesque mutations. Outrage consumed entire systems, and many abandoned the Galactic Alliance in anger. Worlds once bound together fractured into distrust, each blaming another for hidden treachery. The hope of unity collapsed, replaced by accusations that could not be silenced. The Alliance stood weakened, its voice drowned out by the chaos of a galaxy convinced it had been deceived once again. In that vacuum, power shifted toward those ready for war. From this turbulence rose open conflict. The Fel Empire, emboldened and unwilling to trust the Alliance, declared war. Their decision split the galaxy cleanly in two, igniting a struggle where diplomacy no longer mattered. Sith whispers guided the flames, but the galaxy saw only empires colliding. The Imperial Knights held their coat, but the shadow of Sith influence loomed over every choice. The war was not a skirmish of borders, it was a clash destined to consume entire worlds, with victory promising dominion and failure leaving only ruin. The war reached a turning point in the skies above Camus. There, fleets clashed with brutal ferocity, the Alliance standing against Imperial might, bolstered by Sith intervention. Dark sorcery and military power merged into a devastating force that the Alliance could not withstand. Ships burned, worlds trembled, and the once proud defenders of unity fell into retreat. With Ka'ama's lost, Coruscant stood vulnerable, and the Alliance's strength was shattered. The Sith had revealed themselves not as shadows, but as conquerors, their partnership with the Empire sealing the fate of the galaxy's balance. On Ossus, the conflict became a massacre. Darth Talon descended with the fury of the One Sith, turning the sacred Jedi sanctuary into a slaughterhouse. Ancient halls that had echoed with teaching and hope now burned with lightning and blood. The Third Jedi Purge tore through masters and apprentices alike, leaving only ashes where a legacy once thrived. Ossus, a world bound to the Jedi's identity, fell silent under Sith blades. It was not only lives extinguished, it was heritage, memory, and the heart of the Jedi Order carved away in a single strike. As the war consumed all, Darth Krayt struck at its heart. In a brutal coup, he stormed the Imperial Palace, overthrowing Emperor Fel with calculated precision. The old order collapsed in fire and steel, and Krayt crowned himself ruler of a new Sith Empire. His rise was more than conquest, it was a declaration that the Sith no longer lurked in shadows. They ruled openly, wearing the crown of dominion without fear of resistance. The galaxy bent beneath his will, reshaped by a vision of unity enforced through absolute control. Yet not all bent so easily. Fel escaped the fall, retreating with loyal forces to Bastion. There, among stalwart defenders, he forged a rival power. Though stripped of his throne, he carried the banner of resistance, uniting those who refused to kneel. Bastion became a symbol of defiance, a fortress against the tide of Sith domination. Fel's survival meant the galaxy's fate was not sealed. In the shadow of Krayt's empire, a flame still burned, fragile yet unyielding, ready to fight another day. In a galaxy consumed by darkness, a figure of crimson emerged from the shadows. She was Darth Talon, a Twi'lek molded in the image of the Sith's ruthless vision. Unlike others who stumbled into power, she was crafted from the beginning for this destiny. Every movement, every breath, was sharpened into a weapon of the One Sith. Her rise was not a tale of chance, but of design, for in her the Order found a predator shaped by loyalty and the promise of obedience to Darth Krayt's will. From childhood, Talon was placed under the unrelenting discipline of Darth Ruin. His teachings were brutal, designed to strip away compassion and plant devotion to the One Sith in its place. Under his gaze, she learned that weakness was death and hesitation was betrayal. The dark side became her heir, her lifeblood, and her only truth. While others dreamed of freedom, Talon learned to embrace chains, finding power in submission to the doctrine that demanded her soul. Every strike she made, every lesson endured, was etched into her crimson skin as a living testament. Ruin's methods went beyond combat. He sculpted her spirit into unwavering loyalty, a disciple whose every thought aligned with the One Sith. Talon did not question, she obeyed. Where the Jedi taught choice, Ruin erased it, leaving only purpose. The will of Darth Krayt flowed through her as destiny, binding her to an order that promised strength through unity. She was not just an apprentice, she was a vessel,
Join me.
a blade to be unsheathed at her master's command.
Give in to the
Loyalty
power.
was not asked of her, it was carved into her very being. At the end of her training, the final trial came. In the newly consecrated Temple of the Sith, Talon stood before Ruin, the one who had raised her in shadows. Krayt's command was absolute: sever the past. There was no hesitation, no faltering. With a single stroke, she ended her master's life. The lesson was complete. Her loyalty belonged to no one but Krayt, and her devotion was proven in blood. In that instant, she was reborn. No longer a student, but an instrument sharpened to perfection. The apprentice had become executioner. The death of her master shattered her last link to anything resembling the past. No ties, no sentiment, no hesitation. She walked away from the body of Ruin without regret, her path forward carved by fire and darkness. That moment defined her, a breaking point where all weakness was purged. Talon was forged into something colder, something that could never be turned aside. What remained was not merely a warrior, but a symbol of what the One Sith demanded: sacrifice without question and strength without remorse. She was now pure devotion incarnate. With Ruin gone, Krayt claimed her as his hand. This title was no honor, it was a burden and a command. As one of his personal assassins, she was bound to his will completely, an extension of his power that moved without question. Her blades became his judgment, her shadow his reach. From that day forward, Darth Talon ceased to be an apprentice or a lone Sith warrior. She became the hand of Darth Krayt, his hunter and his assassin. A figure feared not for her name, but for the master she served absolutely. Her first mission came swiftly and without mercy. Hunt down Princess Marasiah Fel, the hidden heir to a fallen throne. Talon accepted without hesitation. For her, this was not just an assignment, it was proof of her new role as Krayt's hand. The galaxy's balance trembled on the edge of her blade, for capturing the princess meant cutting away one of the last symbols of Imperial resistance. Cloaked in shadows, Talon moved with lethal precision, her every step echoing the will of her master as she set her sights on Socorro. On the harsh world of Socorro, steel clashed and the night rang with the hum of blades. Talon faced Imperial Knight Elki Vetter, sworn protector of the Fel dynasty. It was a duel between devotion and darkness, but Talon fought with the precision of a predator honed by years of cruelty. Vetter's defense faltered under the storm, and in a final strike, Talon ended her life. The knight's fall was not just death, it was a ripple through the Force, a warning to the princess that her protector was gone, and the hunt had only begun. With her guardian slain, Marasiah fled into the unforgiving shadows alongside Astra, her handmaiden. But the princess could not outrun what stalked her. Talon pursued relentlessly, crimson and black cutting across the night. Each corner turned, each breath drawn was haunted by the predator behind them. Their flight was desperate, but Talon did not tire. To her, the chase was more than duty, it was inevitability. The heir of Fel was prey, and the hand of Krayt would not rest until the galaxy's last ember of resistance was smothered beneath her grasp. Far from this chase, another life spiraled downward. Cade Skywalker, last son of a legendary bloodline, walked a path of ruin. No longer the Jedi he once was, he lived as a bounty hunter, drowning his past in spice and reckless violence. Each choice dragged him further from the legacy he carried, yet he could not escape it. Haunted by memories and dulled by vice, Cade moved through the underworld like a shadow of what he was meant to be. His exile was self-inflicted, but destiny was not so easily silenced. Cade's fall deepened when betrayal became his currency. He delivered Jedi Hoss Traylus into the hands of the pirate Rav, selling loyalty for survival. The deal was bitter, yet Cade masked it with indifference, as if convincing himself that nothing of the Jedi remained within him. Rav cheated him regardless, offering scraps of payment and chains of dependency. In this transaction, Cade revealed how far he had drifted from the path once carved for him. The Skywalker name was stained, and its bearer lived only in shadows and shame. Fate, however, wove threads that neither Predator nor exile could avoid. As Marasiah and Astra fled through the alleys of Socorro, desperation guided them into the path of Cade and his crew. Two stories, one of relentless pursuit and one of reckless escape, collided in a single moment. Cade, Jariah Sin, and Delia Blue stood between survival and surrender, caught in a web spun long before they knew it. For Marasiah, this chance encounter offered a fragile hope. For Cade, it was the first step back into a destiny he had long tried to bury. Darth Talon arrived at the edge of the hunt, her presence undeniable and her pursuit relentless. Cade and his crew, cornered by circumstance, had no choice but to let Marasiah and Astra aboard their ship. Talon's shadow fell over them, even as the engines roared to life. It was not mercy that spared the fugitives, but the Predator's hunger for the greater prize. Her crimson figure burned in their minds as they fled, for she was not finished. To her, escape was only the beginning of the chase, and the hunt would stretch across worlds. The trail led to Vendaxa, a planet where jungles breathed and predators thrived. There, Talon struck again, stalking through the dense wilderness like the apex of all hunters. This was her arena, a place where fear itself seemed to drip from the leaves. She did not come with soldiers, she came with control, bending the world itself to her will. On Vendaxa, the beast did not resist her. They obeyed, their snarls and claws unleashed as weapons of the Sith. Against such a force, even Jedi courage faltered in the wild. With a gesture, Talon released the fury of the jungle. Through the power of Sith beast mastery, creatures that had ruled the shadows now served her command. They tore through the underbrush, forcing the fugitives to split their attention between survival and combat. Every roar, every strike of claw and fang was a reminder that Talon's reach was not limited to her blade. She commanded nature itself as her army, turning Vendaxa into a battlefield designed to overwhelm, distract, and crush those who dared resist the will of the One Sith. Yet resistance rose in the form of Jedi Wolf Sazin and Shadow Vow. Arriving in defense of Marasiah, they joined blades against Talon's storm. Together, they moved with the discipline of the Order, their lightsabers cutting through beasts and shadow alike. They stood as guardians against the Crimson Hunter, fighting not for conquest but for survival of hope itself. But even united, they felt the crushing weight of her ferocity. In Talon, they faced not merely a warrior, but a living embodiment of the Sith's will, precise and merciless. Talon's power revealed itself in full when combat turned personal. She lashed with lightning, arcs of searing energy forcing her foes to stumble beneath the storm. Her body moved with impossible agility, a dance of violence that struck from every angle. Against two Jedi, she held her ground, not with defense, but with overwhelming offense. The jungle lit with flashes of red and white as blades clashed, yet her confidence never wavered. For Talon, this was not struggle but domination, a demonstration of why she was chosen as Krayt's hand. At the height of her assault, when the battle seemed lost, Cade intervened. With fury and desperation, he seized the wreckage around him, wielding the debris through raw power. He hurled it at Talon, the impact breaking her rhythm and slamming her aside into the shadows of the jungle. The strike did not defeat her, but it gave his allies the chance they needed. For a brief moment, the Predator stumbled, and prey escaped her claws. Cade's defiance bought them time, proving that even against Krayt's hand, Destiny could not yet be silenced. Just as the jungle closed in, help came from above. Imperial Knights Draco and Ganner broke through the Sith blockade, their ship crashing into the chaos of Vendoxa. From the wreckage they emerged, sabers igniting with silver light. The battlefield shifted instantly. What had been prey on the run became a stand of warriors. Jedi and Knights locking side by side against Sith and beasts alike. Steel clashed, lightning cracked, and the air was filled with the roar of predators turned into weapons. The balance of the fight teetered, each strike promising either salvation or death. With reinforcements came fury. The clash became a storm of red, blue, and silver sabers, each arc sparking against another in brutal rhythm. Jedi Wolf Sazin held the line with calm determination. Shadow Vow matched Talon's speed with fierce precision, and the Imperial Knights cut down Sith troopers with ruthless efficiency. Yet the Sith fought with equal savagery, refusing to yield. The ground itself shook under the weight of combat. Vendaxa's jungle became an arena of war, its predators silenced beneath the greater violence of Jedi and Sith, colliding in raw defiance. In the storm of battle, sacrifice struck hardest. A Sith blade sought Cade's life, the final blow ready to end the Skywalker line. But Marasiah Fel leapt forward, her body shielding him from the strike. The saber carved through her, crimson spreading across silver armor. Cade caught her before she fell, her choice burning deeper than any wound. The princess's defiance saved him, but her blood marked the cost. Around them, the fight raged on, yet for Cade, the moment froze, a single heartbeat where the war became personal, a scar that could never fade. The weight of her sacrifice shattered Cade's vow. For years, he had sworn never to touch a lightsaber again, burying his past beneath spice and denial. But with Marasiah broken at his side, that oath crumbled. His hand closed around the hilt, and the blade of green fire ignited once more. The sound cut through the chaos like a roar of destiny. Cade Skywalker stood, no longer a smuggler or a coward, but heir to a name written in fire. The saber's glow was not just light, it was the resurrection of a legacy long denied. Rage consumed him, and the target of his fury was clear. Darth Neal, the marauder of Ossus, stood before him, the shadow tied to his father's death. Cade struck with ferocity, each blow a memory of loss, each clash a scream of vengeance. Neal taunted him, savoring the fury, but Cade's power surged beyond control. Their duel became a storm within the greater war, two legacies colliding with blades that sparked like lightning. In Cade's hands, the lightsaber was no weapon of peace. It was raw wrath unleashed upon the killer who haunted his bloodline. Wolf Sazin joined the fight, his presence tempering Cade's fury with the discipline of a master. Together, they pressed Neal back, their blades weaving in deadly unity. Cade's anger fueled the strikes, Wolf's control shaped them, and the Sith Lord faltered beneath the twin storm. At last, a final blow hurled Nile into the abyss, his form cast down by the very power he had mocked. The field shifted, the Sith broken in momentum. In that instant, the tide of battle turned, Cade and Wolf standing together as defiance against the darkness that sought to consume all. The battle on Vendoxa ended with fire and smoke, but not with victory. The Jedi and Imperial Knights pulled back, their retreat sealing Talon's failure. For the first time, as Krayt's hand, she returned empty-handed. In the halls of Coruscant's dark temple, she knelt before her master, crimson head bowed in silence. Punishment was expected, for the Sith had no mercy for failure. Yet Krayt saw beyond defeat. He had glimpsed a name that burned brighter than any prize: Cade Skywalker. Talon was spared not for mercy, but for purpose. Her hunt had only just begun. Cade Skywalker, restless and tormented, made his move. Burdened by betrayal, he infiltrated the Sith Temple, not for glory, but for redemption. His goal was clear: free Hosk Trayless, the Jedi he had once betrayed to Rav, and by extension to the Sith. Through corridors once walked by Jedi, now desecrated and twisted, Cade cut his way forward. Every step was shadowed by his own guilt, every corner dripping with the weight of memory. But the temple was no sanctuary. It was a fortress of predators, and within its blackened halls, Talon was waiting. From the darkness, she struck. Lightning lanced across stone, crimson blades slashed in arcs of death. Cade met her assaults with raw power, not polished skill, He fought with rage and desperation, his strikes reckless but fueled by a strength that surprised even her. Their duel was violent, chaotic, each blow shaking the chamber. Talon pressed with the precision of a trained assassin. Cade countered with fury born of survival. For a moment, it seemed the unrefined storm might overcome her discipline, that the Skywalker name still carried fire enough to defy a hand of the Sith. But shadows move in more than one form. Darth Neil emerged from the black, his presence cutting into the fight with a cruelty all his own. With practiced efficiency, he struck from behind, the coil of the dark side wrapping Cade in invisible chains. The battle ended not with victory, but with silence. Cade collapsed beneath their combined might, his body dragged into captivity. In the temple that had once belonged to his family's legacy, he was caged, bound, and broken. For Talon, the hunt was complete. For the Sith, the true game with Cade Skywalker had only begun. Cade's allies were dragged into torment, their bodies seeded with living coral that burned and twisted beneath their skin. The agony was unrelenting, a cruelty crafted to break Cade's will. He watched as their screams echoed through the dark halls, every moment a reminder of his failure. Faced with the choice of watching them die or embracing what he had sworn to reject, he yielded. Rage and desperation ignited, and he reached into the abyss. The dark side surged through him, unnatural and consuming, yet in that darkness he performed the impossible, healed them. But in saving their lives, he chained himself to the path of shadow. In the silence that followed, Krayt revealed a truth meant to bind Cade further. Stripped of mystery, he spoke of his old life as a Shard Het, once a Jedi, once a warrior of the Clone Wars. He told of exile among Tusken raiders, of battles fought, of humiliation and ruin. His story was meant to inspire fear, to show Cade that every fall could be transformed into dominion. But to Cade, the tale was weakness clothed as destiny. The Skywalker heir heard not triumph but failure, and where Krayt sought awe, Cade answered only with contempt. His mockery struck deep, and the air snapped with reprisal. Talon stepped forward, her fury unleashed in a storm of power. Lightning flared, her blade cut the air, punishment delivered for insolence against her master. Cade staggered beneath the assault but did not bow. The fire within him roared higher, untamed and defiant. He answered not with surrender but with a counterstrike so violent it nearly shattered her body. She was hurled back, broken and gasping, crimson skin scorched by the very power she sought to crush. For the first time, she felt the weight of his potential. Krayt did not allow the moment to end in death. Where Talon saw defeat, Krayt saw opportunity. He forced Cade to heal her, not as an act of mercy, but as a chain. With the same dark energy that saved his friends, Cade was compelled to restore the one he had nearly destroyed. Power and obedience fused in that moment, binding them in a shared wound and a shared corruption. Talon rose again, her life owed to the very man she had sought to destroy. The tie was sealed, not of choice, but of darkness, binding Skywalker to Sith. Talon became Cade's shadow and his teacher, binding him deeper into the Sith by blade and word. Training was merciless. Combat droids tore at him, and when he staggered, she struck harder. Every failure was punished, every bruise a lesson.
Give in to the darkness,
She whispered that
Cade.
strength was born from suffering,
Embrace your
that
true
only by
power.
embracing the pain could Cade become more than a fugitive. She was no gentle mentor, she was a storm that demanded he rise or perish, a reminder that in the Sith, survival itself was victory. Brutality was her language, and Cade was her canvas. She threw him into duel after duel, demanding rage to fuel his strikes, demanding hate to sharpen his edge. When he faltered, she cut him down herself, forcing him to heal through agony. In her eyes, hesitation was weakness, and weakness had no place in Krayt's vision. Cade's instincts grew sharper, his anger more dangerous. Each lesson scarred him, each moment pulling him closer to the truth. Talon repeated without pause. The dark side was not a chain, it was freedom. Talon's methods shifted from pain to temptation. She drew close, her voice soft but edged like a blade, painting the dark side not as burden but as liberation. Cade felt the truth in her words, a pulse in his blood that had always been there, waiting. When her hand lingered against his, when her gaze
Tell me
locked
what
with
you
his,
see.
the battle inside him cracked. Desire drowned his restraint, and for one stolen moment, he gave in. Their lips met, and in that instant, he tasted the freedom she promised and the trap she set. But the Sith never give without taking. Cade awoke in chains, his fleeting indulgence shattered by betrayal. Talon stood over him, lightning dancing at her fingertips, her strike a brutal reminder that temptation was only a weapon. She dragged him before Krayt, no longer a student but a captive, bound for the Emperor's will. In that throne room, Cade's trial reached its cruelest test. Krayt demanded blood, demanded proof of surrender. Before Cade knelt Hosk Tralus, the Jedi he once betrayed. The command was simple: kill or die. Cade's hand trembled, but not for long. The weight of Krayt's command bore down, and Talon's gaze cut through him, unrelenting. In one swift strike, Hosk fell, his body vanishing into the Force. Silence crashed over Cade as his choice sealed the bond. Resistance, once fierce, was broken. Talon felt it, the fury that consumed him, the Skywalker bloodline igniting like wildfire in his veins. In that moment, he was no longer the fugitive clinging to denial. He was bound, drawn into the web of the Sith, his fate entwined with hers by blood and betrayal. In the chaos of rebellion, Cade struck with fury, and Talon bore the cost. His blade cut deep, leaving her broken on the temple floor. The wound was nearly fatal, her crimson form collapsing as the battle roared on. For months she vanished from the war, submerged in Bacta, suspended between life and death. The galaxy moved forward, but within her tank she endured, rage sustaining her when her body could not. The scar she carried was not only carved into flesh, it was etched into her will, binding her fate ever closer to the one she served. When at last she rose from her healing prison, she returned to Krayt's side, unshaken in her loyalty. The campaigns of the One Sith surged again, and Talon was there, crimson shadow beside the Dark Lord. Though her body had been broken, her spirit had not. She fought as if her near death had only sharpened her edge, proved to all that she was not merely a warrior but a hand that would never be severed. Where Krayt strode, she followed, a symbol of survival twisted into strength. Then betrayal struck. Krayt, undone by treachery, was cast into stasis, his body entombed in shadow. While others schemed, Talon remained, guarding his chamber with unyielding devotion. Day after day, she kept her vigil, crimson sentinel before the stillness of her master's form. To many, Krayt was dead. To Talon, he was only waiting. Her faith was absolute, her patience endless. In silence, she kept her oath, blind to the plots that rotted the Empire from within, bound only to the certainty that Krayt would rise again. Her certainty was rewarded. Deep within Korriban's tombs, she felt him stir, and there he stood, resurrected, his body twisted, his power greater than before. The Dark Lord reborn, no longer broken but reforged in shadow and fire. Talon knelt, awe in her eyes, the loyalty she had guarded now repaid in revelation. She had not been wrong to wait, not wrong to believe. From death, Krayt had carved life anew, and with his return, the One Sith were no longer fractured, they were reborn in his image. Krayt unveiled the weapons of his new vision. Legions of Sith troopers, bred in secret, stripped of ambition and desire, loyal only to his will. Beside them, the Annihilator fleets, starfighters forged with dark science and brute destruction, each vessel a promise of domination. Talon stood at his side as he revealed them, crimson shadow to his black throne. It was the dawn of a greater terror, an empire built not on loyalty freely given, but on obedience carved into flesh and steel. Through it all, Talon remained unwavering, hand of a master who had conquered death itself. Talon remained a crimson shadow at Krayt's side as he tore the throne back from Wyrelok's betrayal. In the chaos of Coruscant's temple, she stood firm, her loyalty clear, her blade ready. She did not seek power for herself. She was the hand of the Dark Lord, the instrument that struck when words failed. And as Wyrelok fell, Talon's presence marked the victory not only of Krayt's resurrection, but of devotion that had never faltered. The Empire was his once more, and she was the blade that would keep it so. To set the trap for Cade Skywalker, Talon carried the perfect bait. Imperial Knight Draco, broken and helpless, was delivered encased in carbonite. She placed him in Cade's path with precision, knowing the Skywalker bloodline could never ignore the cry of a friend. It was a gift wrapped in cruelty, a snare forged not with lies, but with truth. Cade could not resist. As she left the frozen night behind, Talon's mission was fulfilled. The board was set. and the game that would decide the galaxy's fate was moving toward its end. When Cade discovered her aboard his ship, their duel reignited like lightning. Blades clashed in narrow corridors, sparks scattering as the ship groaned beneath their fury. Talon fought to draw him deeper into anger, each strike a challenge to surrender the last of his restraint. Cade met her not as prey but as equal, his raw power burning hotter than ever. The fight ended not in death but in withdrawal, Talon retreating, her eyes alive with the knowledge that Cade was closer to the edge than he dared admit. On Coruscant, the final war erupted, and once more their blades found each other. Talon hurled herself into the clash, summoning the dark side in relentless waves. Yet Cade had grown beyond her. His strikes cut through her defenses, his will unshaken by her fury. Each blow reminded her that the boy she once sought to corrupt had become a warrior she could not bend. The duel ended with her staggering back, overwhelmed by the sheer force of Skywalker's rise. Beaten but alive, Talon fled into the shattered halls of the temple. Her loyalty remained unbroken, her duty clear. She ran to warn Krayt, to place herself once more between her master and death. But she was too late. By the time she reached him, the storm had already come. Cade Skywalker and Krayt clashed in a battle that shattered the throne room itself, and in its final strike, the Dark Lord fell. For Talon, it was not defeat in combat, but in time the one enemy even a hand of the Sith could not overcome. The throne room of Coruscant shook with fury as Cade Skywalker and Darth Krayt clashed one final time. Blades of red and green carved fire through the air, each strike echoing the weight of destiny. Cade, hardened by every loss and every scar, stood against the master of the One Sith without fear. Their duel raged as a storm, but in the end, Skywalker struck the killing blow. Krayt fell, the Dark Lord who had defied death undone at last by the heir of a name he sought to control. With that strike, a century of shadows began to collapse. The death of Krayt sent shockwaves through his empire. The One Sith, once bound by absolute obedience, crumbled into chaos. Masters turned on apprentices, factions broke apart, and fear replaced the unity Krayt had forged. What had been an empire of iron will now became shards, scattered across the stars. The galaxy that had groaned under the weight of Sith rule now saw their iron grip weaken, opening the way for a fragile new order to rise. The collapse was not peace, but it was the end of one reign of terror. Yet not all Sith perished. Survivors clawed their way free from the wreckage, unwilling to vanish completely. Among them stood Darth Talon, crimson shadow of the fallen empire. Where others saw only defeat, she saw survival. She retreated into the darkness with the remnants of her kind, unwilling to surrender the dream Krayt had forged. Defeat was not death. For the Sith, every fall was only a step toward return. In silence, they vanished, their presence lingering like smoke in the ruins of Coruscant. Leadership shifted in the aftermath, falling into the hands of Darth Talon. No longer seeking open conquest, he chose the older Sith weapon deception. Under his command, the survivors dissolved into shadows, infiltrating courts, governments, and systems. Their blades were sheathed, but their whispers remained, turning corruption into their battlefield. Power would no longer be taken by armies, but by patience, by poison, by the steady erosion of trust. For the galaxy, the Sith became invisible. For the Sith themselves, it was only another mask. Through it all, Talon disappeared into legend. Her fate was unwritten, her presence unknown. No body was found, no tale confirmed. Only rumors whispered of the Crimson Hand who had once stood at Krayt's side, still carrying his vision into the dark corners of the galaxy. She was not seen again, but her loyalty was never doubted. She became not just a warrior lost to time, but a symbol of Sith devotion, the embodiment of their creed. As long as her name was remembered, the One Sith's shadow was never truly gone.